And welcome back. The hashtag is NewsGang. Also remember, you can send us a text message. The number is 22422. We'll be taking a look at some of your feedback on the program. This is the Mongrel edition, taking a look at the deal that was signed by President William Ruto and the man he called Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Not former, but Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Like we say, sometimes it's in what they say. Could that be an inkling to something? But the deal was signed on Friday. And then, of course, there's the reactions and the aftermath. And the very first reaction or the touch point that, in the words of President William Ruto, Prime Minister Raila Odinga faced was in Kisii. He goes to attend a football match. And in what is usually typically a stronghold for the former premier, this was the reception. Well, not quite what he might have hoped for, Jay.
True. I think must have been a shocker to Raila Odinga, considering that Kisii was one of the places that he did his consultations just 2 days earlier. But then again, the reception is exactly what you would have expected, especially in a place where in recent days have seen or have said that the general ODM mannerism has neglected them. You remember there was a time that ODM had a meeting and a number of Kisii MPs did not show up, insisting that they were being sidelined in the appointments in government and all that. So I want to believe that what happened in Kisii was multi-pronged. One was the young people who feel that Raila Odinga betrayed them by siding with William Ruto in the MOU that was signed. But two, the local politics that has played part. You remember previous staunch supporters of Raila Odinga in Kisii, like the Senator Richard Onyonka, the likes of Anthony Kibagendi, have openly been saying that the party has betrayed them or the party has neglected them. So I think this played very well to them. And it could be something that I want to believe. Also, I saw one of the elders saying that Matiang'i, being a potential presidential candidate, could have also had an issue with that. The people are saying, hey, right now, we also have somebody that we are going to keenly look at as our own. Just like Elke was saying earlier on, that we are still heavily ethnic in our politics. And therefore, when we have somebody that comes from our side of town, and we see somebody that has either disparaged him or acted in a manner likely to suggest that he's not worthy, then we will show our protests to him.
And then Yvonne, was it a couple of days later he spoke in Kiambu?
He did.
I don't know if we can listen to that soundbite, Roba?
We can. He now then had to, of course, find a way to have a comeback, yeah?
Read the mood.
To read the mood. And he was in Kiambu, no less, by the way. Yeah.
Wanasema ni usalata. Tumesaliti nani? Tumesaliti nani? Tumesaliti nani? Hakuna mtu tumesaliti. Tulikuwa tayari tumesema tunataka kuendelea mbele na watu, na wewe wenyewe nikamwambia tuendelee mbele, wakakataa. Nasema mara Raila akatuuliza. Mimi niliwaeleza. Sasa watu wengi wanapiga kelele hapa na pale, oh, Raila ameenda kwa Ruto, ametuacha. Mimi sijaenda kwa Ruto. Ruto amekuja kwangu. Mimi nimesema mimi nibaki, msimamo yangu haijabadilika. Kitu muhimu zaidi mpaka zalime mpaka sasa mimi nakuwa napigania haki ya Wakenya yote.
This was just, I think, a day after Kisii. You've given reasons why what happened in Kisii could have happened. Either one, because of that tag of umesaliti watu, because that did come up after the agreement was signed, that umetusaliti, because of the fact that you were the person who we had seen as the opposition, the person who was going to lead maybe the fight for us against the government that is seen to be unpopular, but then you join them. So that usaliti tag is one. And two is what you said about Kisii politics, because even when he was doing his tour of the areas, after, of course, he said, I'm still consulting to find out whether I'm going to join this government or not, the reception in Kisii was not as great as would have been expected. And for Raila Odinga, I think he's used to some kind of adoration, I think, from such areas. In fact, someone was saying for Raila Odinga, either unampenda sana ama haumtaki. There's no middle ground. So alikuwa amezoea that adoration from that part of the country. But then when you go there and you clearly see people walking away, you start asking yourself, kwa nini imebadilika between the last time I was here and now? And then he goes to Kiambu. One, Kiambu is in Central. Of course, you know the situation is in Central with this government. And then he says that, kwamba ni wao walinitafuta, ni yeye ndo alinitafuta, lakini si mimi. But then there's something else he says that's very interesting. If you can listen to what he said at number 21 about how anataka kubadilisha mambo akiwa ndani.
Kuna shida, hii mambo ya SHA haifanyi kazi mpaka irekebishwe, si ndio? Irekebishwe. Hii mambo ya ushuru ambayo wananchi wanatozwa ni juu sana, hata hii ya nyumba hizi mpaka irekebishwe, sio? Hawezi kurekebisha kama unakaa kando, mpaka uingie tale uambie fanya hii na hii na hii, na weka watu yako hapa na hapa wafanye.
Kuna uhakika gani ukiwa ndani they'll change things? Because as it stands, he talked about SHA. And it's good that he admitted that there are problems with SHA. Everyone has been saying there's a problem with SHA, but there's still this push to implement it. There's still this push of telling people, register yourselves. There's still this push of saying this thing will work. But then sasa unasema ukiwa ndani ndo mambo yatabadilika. For me, that argument does not make sense. And finally, something Lina said made me think about how development follows favor. We even had members of parliament from the central part of the country here on Semana Citizen today, and we had those who are for the government and those who are against it. And the argument for those who are for was that tunawafuata, tunasikizana serikali, tunashirikiana serikali because we want to get development kwetu nyumbani kwa watu wetu. Because if we don't have this favor with government, there's no development itaenda kwa wananchi. Utaambia watu nini when you go back in 2027 and start asking them nipigeni kura tena. So for me, that it's how things have been in this country, but it's very questionable.
And it makes almost nonsense of the Constitution and the principle of devolution, where funds follow function, and it was supposed to be removing everything from the center. And remember, we used to call it, in fact, the central government, and we now made it the national government, you know, together with 47 other county governments. But the reactions, continue to come in. And a big factor that they're going to have to contend with, like Lina said earlier, is Gen Z. I mean, I think I have been on record here as saying that after the June protest, that it's going to be a different system of governance. I did say it's going to be a co-presidency where there is nothing that the executive and the president will not say that the Gen Z will not subject to serious scrutiny. It doesn't matter whether it is a small proclamation or one that is major or a regulation or a law that is being passed, without the youth saying, hang on a second, we want to interrogate that. What does this mean? Where are you going to get the money from? What does that mean for us? And that is something they're going to have to think about here. The people who are at the Kisii Stadium, local politics notwithstanding, were also young people. The country, I mean, around, some things are easy to discern without having, as the late Kajang used to say, a passionometer. There is a mood in the country. What is that mood since Friday when this deal was struck? Because in their words, they're saying, this is not about party politics, this is not about individuals, this is for the people. But how do the people feel? And I think even on that day, we had a couple of stories where we went around the country listening to what people had to say, and many of them are, just get on with it, rather than the palpable excitement that, oh, okay, now you are one and so are we. And I want us to listen to the young people whom I think drove President William Ruto towards this mongrel type of government that he so vehemently spoke against. That was driven in large part by the youth and their protests. And they also had something to say about, the signing of that deal. Let's listen first to Wanjira.
points are nothing new. In fact, William Ruto has disregarded all the 10 points over the course of his presidency. The sovereignty of the Kenyan people, the right to life, all of those have been disregarded. So his alliance with Raila, in fact, I think Raila himself said that William Samoei Ruto, even if we give him 100 years, he will not change anything for Kenya.
So these are the same people trying to solve the problem that they created. So how can the problem solve the problem? They are the problem.
Now, I dare say that this might be rather different from the other handshakes or MOUs or deals that we have had, because we've never had to contend with youth the way we are doing now. The level of engagement is much higher. I think the level of awareness of their rights, I mean, this is very different, say, from the one in 2018 with President Uhuru Kenyatta. Certainly very different from, even if you think about that first MOU that was broken, as you know, Sam, you said on the show, between Raila Odinga and the late President Mwai Kibaki, and even the one between Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. The youth are a very different factor now. They are a majority of the population. They have found their voice and they have found their space. Where this goes in terms of, okay, this is unity and this is what we're doing and we're doing it for you, many of the young people are asking, we didn't ask you. And remember, there's been hobbling and stumbling from you know, the protests. You recall right after that, when the youth were still unhappy with the president, he formed was it a 100-member committee or team to look into those issues? And the youth said, thank you, but no thanks.
But what happened to that?
And there was quite a few committees, by the way, that were formed right after that. Remember, there was even the one to audit public debt. You know, nothing came of that either. And then, by the way, he then rejigged that one when the youth said no.
Yep.
And then he included a couple of youth. They still said no.
Mm-hmm.
They are now the ones who are looking at this deal and saying, okay, well, where are we in that deal? Because this deal, to be honest, is the same players, absolutely the same players. I mean, they talked about, I think at the start of it, what was that President Ruto said to Raila Amolo Odinga, Prime Minister of Kenya and party leader of my former party? That just tells you these are people who've been together, apart, together, apart. This is something that they keep doing, like we've said, around the table, a reunion. But now there is the factor of Gen Z and where this is taken to, and even what some could term, and even from what they're saying about a constitutive framework going forward, because for some of the things that we hear being touted would require things like a referendum. Yeah. Are you going to conduct a referendum with the young people in this country who are saying, what are our issues? At what point during those consultations that Raila Odinga said he had around the country, I remember he said he would speak to politicians and he also said he would speak to young people. I'm not sure whether he did speak to the young people, and if he did, what was the constitution of that sort of framework and who he spoke to and where. But they're going to be a factor in this. And I'm not sure the young people see themselves in the events of last week on Friday at the steps of KICC.
And, you know, I think it's fair to say that from now moving forward, Vijana Fire will not be enough. Mm-hmm. It's not enough to rally the young people towards whatever their aspirations are. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, what is youth? Mm-hmm. It's a very short time. Yeah. If you follow the entire system of 844, you will clear it by the age of 21 or 22. Sure. You only have 13 years to exit that bracket of youth.
Yeah.
In those 13 years, you're supposed to settle in your career, start up a life, whether it's in business or whatever it is. If you want to settle down in a family, you have to do it that time. The African culture requires that as you settle down in marriage, then there are certain procedures you need to take care of. You may have children. You have to take care of them. They come at a cost. You have to take them to school. And as you do all these, you also have aspirations where you want to take your education if that's a priority. But at the same time, you get to a point that you have parents that are retiring. You need to take care of them. as all this is happening, you have an evolving economy and a social setup in a space where 1,000 shillings of 2003 is not 1,000 shillings of 2020-25. And as all this is happening, you're also contending with the challenges of the soft issues, the soft services that you're looking for, the socioeconomic factors. If it's health, you're getting to a point that healthcare is becoming so expensive. There are evolving challenges in that sector. Education is becoming a problem. So how can you continue to tell young people, Vijana Fire, and you're expecting that now they'll be so happy to support you? They may vote for you, but they're not with you. They're voting just because it is time for an election, they need to tick a certain box, but it's not because that they're so inspired to be walking that direction. I also remember, if you're to look at that document that is signed by President William Ruto and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, it is signed by those two under very unique titles: Party Leader UDA, Party Leader ODM. You remember that each of these parties belongs to a coalition. UDA is one of the key pillars in the Kenya Kwanza Alliance. There was no signatures on behalf, Party Leader of UDA on behalf of the Kenya Kwanza Alliance. There was no signature of Raila Odinga saying ODM on behalf of the Azimio coalition. Azimio coalition has other parties like Wiper, Jubilee, PNU included, and so many others. The total was about 26, but of course, things have changed over time. In the Kenya Kwanza Alliance, you have UDA, Ford Kenya, and there was ANC, which has now merged to form UDA. In that event, you did not see Speaker Moses Wetangula or representation from the Ford Kenya party. Of course, he is disadvantaged because there's a recent High Court ruling saying, or judgment saying, that you cannot continue to be a state officer in the name of Speaker of the National Assembly and at the same time party leader. But then we hear in a funeral in Kitale, in Trans Nzoia, the funeral of former chairperson of IBC, Wafula Chebukati, and the president says that I thank my brother, Speaker Moses Wetangula, because he has been helping us in this entire process. Why didn't that come up at the KICC? Musalia Mudavadi was not in attendance in that event. Later on gave a statement saying that he has had a very busy schedule. He was at the Kenya Kwanza parliamentary group meeting. Then he had other events to attend. You look at the Wiper party and the fallout that has come from Wiper, Jubilee, DAPK, Eugene Omalo saying that Betrayal in the City, if you've ever read that book, this is it. This is the Betrayal in the City. Indeed, KICC is what is the landmark of Nairobi City. So as this is happening, there's a sense of what you'd call insincerity in the political circles. And there's a reason that ODM did not form a coalition with UDA, because why to form a coalition with UDA? The consequences would be far-reaching, because that allows members of the UDA party, including those that are pro-Gachagua, to actually say, I resign from the UDA party, but I do not lose my seat. Because you're just dissociating yourself with a movement of a party that you don't agree with. If that were to happen, then you'd find other political parties like Ford Kenya saying, we no longer want to belong in this arrangement. already we're seeing the Democratic Party of Kenya giving notice that within the next 30 days, now 29 remaining, they are going to withdraw from the Kenya Kwanza Alliance. So this is happening after promising to strengthen devolution and so many other good things, but you find the president going to the streets of Nairobi, making further promises that are not budget-based, and you've seen, promising learners a very good thing, a good meal. I mean, all of us grew aspiring to eat a chapati. But the manner in which this is being done, I don't think it brings a lot of honor to systems and processes and separation of powers, especially when you come to think of devolution.
Even the ID, sorry, Gituku, even the ID, removing the charges.
Exactly, including the identity
roadside
cards.
declarations are back.
Sorry, roadside declarations?
Undeclarations or...
Yeah. So
no,
really...
they're not roadside because the vehicle is right in the middle of the road.
So the sunroof declaration.
Sunroof declaration.
So really, for the sake of, if the commitment here is to honor the Constitution of 2010.
Not like this.
And I think I was having a chat with you, Yvonne, and telling you that I think it's been so long since we read the Constitution. This Constitution was passed in August 2010. The promulgation was on 27th of August 2010. Don't ask me how I was at that time. But I was
you've
aware
read the Constitution
of what was going on. Everyone appeared to know what it is, including those that said baba amesoma. Or so and so. Right?
So CPO tumesoma.
15 years is such a long time.
Yeah.
If you look at judges when they are faced by litigants, they tell them, bring your submissions. You bring all of them, you make your all submissions, then they
subject it
retreat
to the law.
to go and and write a judgment. So they read.
Yeah.
Experts of the law are reading the Constitution and other laws. What are we doing ourselves?
Yeah.
Are politicians reading the Constitution that they swear to implement?
Nope.
How many political leaders that are elected to offices would today say that I know what I need to do, I know what my mandate is, and I know how to defend this Constitution? So that you don't go signing things, and the next day you can't even tell what exactly you signed. Your activities, your actions are not reflective of someone who really respects the separation of powers and functions as per Schedule 4 of the Constitution.
They say there's no honor amongst...
Watu.
No honor amongst Jaza Pengo for 5 marks.
There's even a book.
Yep. Okay.
Funge
So,
kibanda.